Have you ever felt like your day is a series of broken pieces that never quite fit together? You work, you rest, you work again, and yet, at the end of the day, you have nothing to show for it but a deep, hollow exhaustion. You tell yourself you're too busy to build a dream, that your schedule is a chaotic mess that leaves no room for real work. But what if the very gaps in your day, the hours you currently spend in a daze of fatigue, are actually the keys to your freedom? This is the story of Maya, a woman who stopped drowning in the in-between hours and started using them to carve out a life she didn't need an escape from. Maya was 32 years old, living in a cramped apartment where the most expensive thing she owned was a laptop she hadn't opened in 2 years. She worked as a server in a high-paced downtown bistro, but her schedule wasn't a standard shift. She worked what the industry calls a split shift. From 10:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m., she was on her feet, navigating the frantic lunch rush. Then she was off until 5:30 p.m., when the dinner crowd began to pour in. Those 3 hours in the middle of the day, from 2:30 to 5:30, were Maya's personal purgatory. She was too tired to do anything productive, but the gap was too short to go home, sleep properly, and come back. So she stayed near the restaurant. She would sit on a park bench or in a corner of a library, staring at her phone, scrolling through social media, and eating a cold sandwich. She felt like a ghost, waiting for her own life to resume at 5:30, only to finish work at 10:30 p.m., crawl into bed, and repeat the cycle. The breaking point came when she received an invitation to her 10-year college reunion. She looked at her old portfolio from when she studied graphic design, vibrant, bold, and full of promise. Then she looked at her hands, red from dishwater and carrying heavy trays. She realized she wasn't just working a job. She was losing herself in the gaps of her own schedule. She had convinced herself that because she didn't have a solid 8-hour block of free time, she couldn't possibly build a freelance career. She was waiting for a perfect moment that would never come. She sat in the park that afternoon, watching the sun hit the skyscrapers of the city's design district, and whispered to herself, "If I don't find a way to use these 3 hours, and the next 10 years will look exactly like the last 10. She didn't know it yet, but those 3 hours of dead time were about to become her greatest competitive advantage. Every Tuesday at 1:30 p.m., right at the tail end of the lunch rush, a woman named Elena sat at table 4. Elena was the founder of a boutique branding agency, the kind of place Maya dreamed of working for. One afternoon, as Maya cleared Elena's table, she accidentally dropped a small sketchbook from her apron. Elena picked it up, flipping through pages filled with intricate logos and bold typography concepts. "These are incredible," Elena said, looking up. "Why are you serving pasta instead of designing brands?" Maya felt a familiar sting of shame. "I want to," she replied, "but I work a split shift. I'm at the restaurant all day and half the night. By the time I have a break, I'm too exhausted to think, and by the time I get home, it's nearly midnight. I just don't have the time to build a portfolio." Elena didn't offer sympathy. Instead, she looked Maya dead in the eye. "What do you do between 2:30 and 5:30? "Nothing," Maya admitted. "I sit in the park. I'm in limbo. It's only 3 hours. Not enough time to really get into a creative flow." Elena leaned back and smiled. "That's where you're wrong. Most of my designers have 8 hours a day, and they spend 6 of them in meetings, on social media, or getting coffee. They are distracted and slow. If you have 3 hours of focused, uninterrupted time, you can outwork a full-time professional. Your dead time isn't a limitation. To 2:45, you decompress. Walk to 2:45, you decompress. Walk, breathe, drink water. From 2:45 to 4:45, you enter the deep work sprint. You go to the library across the street, you turn off your phone, and you design. No distractions. In those 120 minutes, you do more than most people do in a week. From 4:45 to 5:15, you handle the business side, emails, searching for leads, or learning one new software trick. Then at 5:30, you walk back into the restaurant. Maya looked at the napkin, her heart racing. "It sounds so short," she whispered. "It's not about the length of time," Elena replied. "It's about the intensity of the focus. You've been treating those 3 hours like a waiting room for your next shift. Start treating them like the boardroom of your future company. I'm going to give you a challenge. For the next 90 days, I want to see one new branding concept from you every week. If you can show me 12 solid projects built entirely during your lunch breaks, I'll give you your first real client. But if you miss a single day of your sprint, the deal is off." Maya took the napkin, her fingers trembling. For the first time in years, the 3-hour gap didn't feel like a weary pause. It felt like a countdown. The first week wasn't a triumph. It was a disaster. On Monday at 2:45 p.m., Maya sat in the library with her laptop open, but her brain felt like it was filled with wet cement. When the lunch rush had been brutal, a double-booked floor, a broken POS system, and 3 hours of running on pure adrenaline. Now, in the silence of the library, the crash hit her with the force of a tidal wave. She stared at a blank digital canvas for 45 minutes. Her eyes burned from the harsh fluorescent lights of the restaurant, and her lower back throbbed. The temptation to close the laptop, curl up in a corner, and scroll through Instagram for inspiration was almost physical. She felt a deep, nagging voice in her head. "You're just a waitress who's tired. You don't have the energy for this. Just rest. You have a 5-hour shift tonight. You need your strength." By the second week, the physical pain was joined by a psychological wall. She was trying to learn a new 3D rendering software, but every tutorial felt like a foreign language. She felt behind, outdated, and fraudulent. While her friends were posting photos of their midday coffee dates or gym sessions, Maya was hiding in a library cubicle, fighting the urge to faceplant onto her keyboard. She realized that the sprint wasn't about creativity. It was about endurance. It was about forcing a tired mind to execute when it wanted to evaporate. The turning point came on day 22. Maya was exhausted, hungry, and frustrated because a logo she was designing looked cheap. She was seconds away from packing her bag and quitting Elena's challenge. But then, she looked at the napkin Elena had drawn on. She remembered that she wasn't just fighting for a career. She was fighting for the girl in the college portfolio who still had a spark in her eyes. She took a deep breath, drank a liter of cold water, and set a timer for 25 minutes. She told herself, "I don't have to be a genius. I just have to stay in the chair." She didn't finish the logo that day, but for the first time, she didn't check her phone once. She didn't let the fatigue win. When she walked back into the bistro at 5:30 p.m. for the dinner shift, something had changed. Her legs still ached, but her mind felt sharp. She wasn't just a server waiting for the clock to run out anymore. She was a designer who happened to be serving tables. She had survived the fog, and for the first time in years, she felt like she was the one in control of the time, not the other way around. By the end of the 3rd month, Maya's library cubicle had become her sanctuary. The 120-minute deep work sprint was no longer a struggle. It was a ritual. She had completed the 12 branding concepts Elena challenged her to create. They weren't just sketches anymore. They were full, professional-grade case studies. Her speed had tripled. Because she only had 2 hours, she had learned to stop second-guessing herself. She had learned to trust her first instinct and execute with a level of intensity she never knew she possessed. On the 90th day, Maya handed a tablet to Elena during her Tuesday lunch visit. Elena scrolled through the work in silence for 10 minutes. "You didn't just do the work, Maya," Elena said, her voice quiet. "You found your voice. This isn't student work. This is agency-ready." True to her word, Elena sent Maya's portfolio to a contact, a local organic skincare startup looking for a complete rebrand. 2 days later, while Maya was folding napkins for the dinner shift, her phone buzzed. It was an email from the startup founder. They didn't want to interview her. They wanted to hire her based on her raw, high-energy style. The project fee was $2,500, more than Maya earned in an entire month of serving tables and collecting tips. Maya sat in the break room, staring at the number on her screen. She realized that for 3 months, she had been earning $15 an hour, plus tips at the restaurant. But in her golden hours, she was effectively earning over $100 an hour. The math was undeniable, but the world had one more test for her. The next day, the restaurant manager, seeing Maya's newfound discipline and focus, pulled her aside. "Maya, you've been incredible lately. You're faster, more organized, and the customers love your energy. I want to promote you to floor manager. It's a $10,000 raise, health benefits, and a steady 40-hour week. No more split shifts." It was the comfort trap. For years, Maya had prayed for a steady schedule and a raise. It was the safe path, the one her parents would be proud of. But she realized that the steady schedule would eat her golden hours. It would fill her 9 to 5 with spreadsheets and staff conflicts, leaving her too drained to ever touch a design software again. The promotion was a gilded cage. She looked at the manager, and then at the library across the street where she had spent the most difficult 90 days of her life. She realized she didn't want a better version of her old life. She wanted a completely different one. She turned down the promotion. That afternoon, she walked into the library, opened her laptop, and started the skincare rebrand. She wasn't just a waitress with a hobby anymore. She was a business owner who happened to be working a bridge job. The bridge was getting shorter every day. 6 months to the day after her first conversation with Elena, Maya stood in the middle of the restaurant during the frantic transition between lunch and dinner. But this time, she wasn't holding a tray. She was holding an envelope. She handed her resignation to the manager, the same one who had offered her the promotion. She wasn't leaving for another restaurant. She was leaving because her 3-hour career had officially outgrown her 40-hour job. In those 6 months, Maya hadn't just designed logos. She had designed a new version of herself. By the end of month 5, she was consistently earning $5,000 a month from 3 hours of high-intensity freelance work each afternoon. The math was simple. She was making more in 15 hours a week than she had in 50 hours at the bistro. But the real victory wasn't the money. It was the realization that she was no longer a victim of her circumstances. She had taken the very thing that made her feel trapped, her fragmented schedule, and turned it into a weapon of focus. 1 year later, Maya sat in a bright, sun-drenched studio of her own. She no longer had to hide in a library cubicle or fight the fog of a lunch rush. She worked with clients globally, and her work was being featured in design journals. Elena, now a close friend and collaborator, sat across from her. "Do you miss the park bench? Elena joked. Maya laughed. I miss the lesson I learned there. I used to think time was a flat line, that if I didn't have 8 hours in a row, I had nothing. Now I know that time is about geometry. You don't need a long line. You need a solid block. You need a space so sacred and so focused that the rest of the world disappears. Maya's story is a reminder that your schedule is not your prison. It is your blueprint. Most people spend their lives waiting for the right time, a mythical day when their schedule clears up, their energy is high, and the stars align. That day never comes. Success is built in the messy gaps, the tired afternoons, and the in-between hours that everyone else throws away. Whether you work a split shift like Maya, a midnight shift, or a grueling weekend rotation, you have a golden block hidden in your day. It might be 5 a.m. to 7 a.m., or it might be 10 p.m. to midnight. It is the time when the world isn't asking anything of you, but you are usually too tired or too discouraged to ask anything of yourself. Here is your challenge. Stop looking for more time and start looking for different time. Identify your 2 or 3 golden hours, the hours you currently waste because they feel too small to matter. For the next 6 months, protect those hours as if your life depends on them. Because, just like Maya, the life you actually want is waiting for you in the very hours you are currently throwing away. Your schedule isn't the problem. Your belief that you need a perfect schedule is the problem. Change the geometry of your day. Claim your hours. Build your future. Because the only difference between a server and a CEO is how they spend the 3 hours that everyone else says are impossible.